you for the attendance to this webinar. I am Cristian Pichardo. I have been in the pharmaceutical and life sciences industries for 15 years. I am a health economics and value communication consultant at Basecase, and I'm also partner at Aditum Consulting and the Mirror Office, two companies focus on understanding better the perspectives of different stakeholders to try to identify solutions for the healthcare challenges that we have in several countries. Okay, so I will start this conversation talking about the objectives of this webinar. In this webinar, we will talk about some ideas. Please feel free to add your questions in the chat. The idea is that at the end of the webinar, we can have a small moment for discussion, for sharing some ideas. And we will use the strategic foresight approach as a framework for this discussion. So it might be known from some of you. This is a framework that was developed to understand better how can we, as organizations, as complex organizations, navigate in different environments that tend to be evolving, changing, and with a lot of different incentives. As you know, in the healthcare industries, we have a particular situation where the final value of the products is delivered to the patients, but we have a whole set of stakeholders that involve payers, prescribers, providers, policymakers, caregivers, the families of the patients that also receive some value from the different products and solutions that we have in the industry. So that makes it a very complex environment to work on. And also something that we have is that we have complex organizations. We have organizations that have that depend a lot on research and investment. So we have long-term objectives in terms of commercial research and development, in terms of mergers and acquisition, while we also have medium and short-term commercial objectives. So we have to find a good way to balance those different incentives. And we also have a corporate strategy, business unit strategy, and product strategy. And we have to accomplish all the commercial objectives using a multidisciplinary team, because we have a multiplicity of stakeholders in the field with different incentives and with different backgrounds. So we have to navigate through this environment, while we also have to take into consideration that it is evolving. So even if we have already mastered the left part of this diagram, the part that involves business intelligence and pure management, we are at all moment dealing with some trends that might affect our interactions with the different stakeholders, with the different elements of the value chain. And there is also an opportunity to have some leadership in terms of have some leadership with the main stakeholders, with the key decision makers, with the key opinion leaders in the industry, to try to drive some policy changes that might benefit the patients, and also to try to influence on the regulation, and at the last moment to try to change how the patient journey is evolving for the different therapeutic areas where we are trying to make an impact. So when we see this very complex environment, we see that there's a bridge between this internal world and this external world. And success in this very complicated market is driven by our ability as an organization to walk through this bridge in terms of identifying where to play in the environment to win commercially, to win for the patient, to win in terms of adjusting the patient journey, but also how can we identify the trends, identify insights in the right way to drive change management inside of the organization. the companies that have been more successful in this are the ones that have crossed the bridge in the most efficient way to try to identify which are the right initiatives that will create a lot of impact in the field, but also the ones that have taken a leadership approach to the healthcare system, and the ones that have understood that all these trends create a lot of pressure internally for change management, for improved capabilities, for improved competencies, for improved skills, for improved organization approaches. And so we will go into some of the aspects of these elements that are more related to value generation. Okay, because at the center of this, given that we have this complex environment network with a lot of different backgrounds and incentives, we have to identify what is valuable for each of them and which is the right way that we can approach and engage with these stakeholders so we can gain leadership in this complex environment. Okay, so let's start with some of the key trends in terms of management. Okay, so if we think about management, we have seen an evolution of the approach of the healthcare organizations. Also, a change in the approach that has impacted in a change in the organization of the pharmaceutical companies and the medical device companies, the diagnostic companies. And we have seen that in the beginning, like 10 years ago, when this revolution started, when this value communications revolution started, we have this system of silos where all the organizations have some teams that were experts on their field and that were delivering some information that was required for some milestones. So, for example, you have the market access colleagues, the medical affairs colleagues that were consulted, that were responsible of expert-related tasks that might support the overall commercial strategy. However, during this revolution, at some moment, we figured out that payers were having a more relevant role. So, given that we had some inertia from the previous approach to healthcare, some of the silo approach remained, while the market access role started to do a role of a steward in terms of identifying which are the milestones that have to be developed by each of the different organizations to try to address the needs of the payers and regulators in a different way. Okay, so even if the organizations were still or have been still led by commercial, market access started to have this more integrative role towards value communication, towards evidence generation, and towards trying to achieve inclusions, coverage, and good pricing in the market. Okay, and now what we have seen is that market access is no longer only an area in the organizations. We now have a market access function that's broader than the scope of a normal area. So if we check into any brand plan, if we check into any medical affairs plan, or regulatory or research and development or public affairs, the most successful organizations currently have this perception where everything is related to how can we capitalize on met needs with good science, with good evidence to create market access. Okay, in understanding market access as being able to have availability of the products and solutions that patients need for their particular diseases. So when we start reaching this level in the organizations, conversations start to be centered in the needs of the patients, in the needs of the accounts, and in the needs of the system. So this transformation has put value at the center of the conversation. But when we talk about value, just as we have defined market access, when we talk about value, what do we mean by value? Okay, so let's ask the stakeholders. So there was a survey with more than 1,000 with more than 100 industry experts, and they have said that for them, most of the items that deliver value in a conversation are related to the unmet need. Okay, so if we think about the original approach to communication in the pharmaceutical market, everything was very focused on the attributes of the product, the outcomes, the innovation, the new mechanisms of action. But it seems that what stakeholders are valuing the most is a clear conversation about the unmet need and the burden of disease. So we start to see that this requires a lot of coordination between different parts of the organizations, and we start to see that if we don't have the competency to talk in a structured way about which is the particular treatment gap that we are covering, our value communication is going to have only one side of the coin. The traditional approach on clinical evidence is also present, is the second most mentioned part. But we also have a third of the respondents that is focused on comparators, safety, and in the last, in the top five, we have the price. So we have two interesting findings here. One of them is that the treatment gap is a lot of the value of a product. The highest and the better communicated that we can and the better the highest the treatment gap and the better that we can communicate the unmet need, it will be easier for us to communicate that we have a good solution for it. Also, if the evidence can support that, and if we think that that value is mostly based on price, we will get a surprise in the field. If we think that value is only based on the clinical efficacy, we will get a surprise in the field. So we have to build stories that have both sides on them. The ability to communicate which is the treatment gap, the ability to communicate the differentiators, the classic differentiators in terms of efficacy and safety versus comparators, and then the ability to put the cost into perspective. Okay, so this is about how organizations are evolving into different ways of working in the field. But we also have two emergent parts of the organizations. If we think about the traditional pillars of every pharmaceutical organization, we could think about research and development, because without any products, we cannot make business. Also because since we have patents and since we have losses of exclusivity and potential generic competition and potential competition from new technologies, we always have to keep at the speed of research and development. And we also have commercial, the traditional part that identifies which are the messages that we want to convey to try to drive the procurement, the purchasing of these of our products and solutions. But we have seen that in the last 10 years, market access has been key. And now that 90% of the sales of a product depend on public or private payers, that becomes even more relevant. But also we have seen in the last 5 years a huge transformation of the medical affairs role. In which sense? We have now a lot of novel evidence sources, and like wearables, electronic medical records, also patient-reported outcomes, information that comes from claim databases or from retrospective data. And there is a challenge to try to identify the data sources, clean them in a way that's transparent for everyone, that's replicable, and then in the need of integrating this into the strategy, into the communication, and also nurturing the environment so it can accept these novel sources of data as part of the body of evidence of any evidence dossier for approvals, for reimbursement, for coverage, and for pricing. Okay, so we see that these trends imply that we cannot as organizations stay with only the promotional messages or the detailed aids as we did before. We need a way to communicate better to payers, to other stakeholders, and we also need a way to integrate and synthesize in a transparent, replicable way the information that comes from these new sources of evidence. Okay, and the organizations that can and will be successful in this market are the ones that can upskill to empower these new areas and to put it at the same level of the traditional strategic areas of the organization. If we think about leadership or what we're trying to do in the field, what payers, what physicians, what key opinion leaders expect from us as healthcare industries is that we can do three things with them, that we can understand their needs. We did a payer research, and one of the things that was mostly commented was that people were expected to be listened to, that the field force, that the key account executives, that the MSLs, the medical managers were able to actually understand and listen and then take action on their insights in a different way. Also, they expect that that we can partner with the system to identify how can we use these novel sources of evidence in a different way so they can understand better the value that the products and solutions will deliver to them in their particular settings, in their particular accounts, and for their particular patients. So there is a need to tailor the evidence to the particular settings of each of the stakeholders. And also, one of the things that they have mentioned is that they want us to share information, the information that we have from our patient assistance programs, the information that we have about the actual adherence, the actual efficacy, the pharmacovigilance reports. They want us to be able to communicate that information unbiased. They want us also to be very clear about the benefits, the pros, the cons of our products from an unbiased scientific perspective, so they can make their own decisions. One of the things that was like an interesting finding during that research was that they believe that the information that is delivered to them 80% of the times is not relevant, or it's repetitive, or it's biased, or it's not focused on their actual needs. So, and we will see that in some additional views of this presentation. But they prefer to have quality over frequency in terms of the engagements. Okay, what they have seen as good characteristics of a pharmaceutical company or medical device company when they can gain leadership in the market is that they have a commitment from the leadership, that they can focus. It's very clear that they are focusing on particular business units that can close treatment gaps in the market, and that they have tangible outcomes. That everything that they create or deliver is tangible, that they can communicate it in an easy way, and that they can use it to influence on the decisions that the system is doing. Then we are also seeing that we have some trends about what the payers and what other stakeholders want as a way of communication. Okay, so if we think that in this very challenging environment, we have to understand better our different customers and our different audiences to deliver value, we can see that that the closer that we are to payer researches, to stakeholder research on preferences, we will have the better that we will communicate our value to them. So we see that in recent surveys that people stakeholders are expecting to have a hybrid approach to engagements. And that hybrid approach is not only in terms of remote versus face-to-face. It's also in terms of synchronic versus asynchronic interactions. So they expect that when things require a lot of concentration as professional education, they expect to have a higher participation of remote and virtual alternatives. When they expect to have, they also expect to attend to fewer in-person conferences. So this is very important because we can see that time is a relevant resource for our stakeholders. If they want to get better professional education, they want to have better information, but sometimes they don't want to commute. They don't want to take all the burden that will come from having in-person interactions or conferences. Also, they expect to have more training about products virtually. And virtually, it's not only remote, but also in a website where they can enter and where they can identify the relevant data that they really want to understand. Also, something that's interesting because it changed in half a year, that they don't want to have that many representative visits in their office. That doesn't mean that they don't want to have information. You can see that they expect to have more professional education. They expect it to be more virtual, but they don't want to have the same level of frequency in terms of the visits. And that's very related to that fact that to that finding that they prefer quality over frequency. They don't want to have 7 visits per month if there's not a relevant message that will be delivered in those particular meetings. And something that's also interesting is the fact that telemedicine, it grew as a trend, but now it's like slowing down. So so we start to see that there are some things where payers and other stakeholders want to have the flexibility of the digital tools, while in some other, as telemedicine, it's not like a steady trend in the market. We also can see that if they have to rank which is their preferred method of contact with our field teams, we can see that email is growing. We can see that in-person interactions are decreasing. However, video calls are being more accepted than ever. Okay, so we see this trade-off in terms of in-person communications versus video communications. What does this mean for us? It means for us that we have to develop tools that can be used in video calls, that can be used in person, and that can be used to tell a story without having to be in the same room. Okay, phone call had not changed, and text messages have not been the most successful preferred method of contacts. So when we think about how can we integrate this into an omnichannel strategy, something that you can use either in person or in video calls, and something that can help you to send some email notifications, to send communications. It might be something that the stakeholders can value in this new environment. Okay, if we go to now, if we think about what does this mean in terms of strategic foresight, we will have our old challenge, the challenge of trying to understand, to diagnose which are the current attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors towards the disease, towards the unmet needs, towards our products, and we have to understand which are the desired, from the perspective of the patient outcomes and the system sustainability, the desired attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that might help us influence in the patient journey of the particular disease that we are interested. on. And it seems that there is a need to have this transformational narrative that can help our field teams to achieve this transformational journey in our stakeholders to impact in the patient journey. However, sometimes we don't have the right tools to do it, and sometimes our tools have not evolved at the same speed than the rest of the market, and this can have a lot of implications in terms of uptake, in terms of approvals, in terms of coverage, in terms of it being or not being preferred in the treatment protocols. So this has a lot of implications. There's a lot at stake each time that we have a conversation with a key decision maker. How are teams solving that today? Most of them, like when we think about our value communicators, the field force, the key account managers, the people that are in the field, or the people that have a relevant role that involves engaging with the stakeholders, they depend mostly on having a good story, which is maybe 75% of the challenge, having a good story that can be supported with evidence. But also, they need to adapt that story to different archetypes of stakeholders and to different preferences of stakeholders for learning, for receiving information, given the trends in the preferences that we have identified before. In addition, our value communicators in the field are not alone. They face a lot of competition. They face a lot of challenges to deliver the value, to compete for attention, to compete for interest. And if the stakeholders are not very willing to have a lot of in-person communications or in-person engagement, identifying which is the right stakeholder journey to communicate the messages is also something that requires a lot of flexibility and better understanding from our end and having the right tools and approaches. However, what we have seen is that the resources, the channels for trying to address these challenges has not evolved in the same way. For communicating the value story, we still have like the traditional materials, value dossiers, value story slide decks, maybe some one-pagers or flashcards for information, some additional documents or reports, and when organizations have made a step towards digitalization, they might have some interactive PDFs that will kind of show the story in a particular way. And for supporting evidence, they could have some Excel models. I think that we have all been in the situation where we have to communicate something using Excel, and it might not be the right tool for that. They might have also some ad hoc developments of models. They could have some publications, technical reports, summaries, or other tools to try to summarize and communicate the supporting evidence to the story. But if we think about the majority of the tools, they are focused mostly on slide decks, PDFs, some spreadsheets, and sometimes some custom applications. Okay, so when we think about the criticality of the stakeholders that are related to market access, to medical affairs, to regulatory, to commercial objectives, to commercial negotiations, and when we think about the fact that they have evolved in this very complex environment, and we think that our tools are the same that we have had for the last 20 years in the sense of static or difficult to follow or difficult to read, then we can see that there's a huge unmet need for trying to come up with new tools that can help our teams in the field and also our stakeholders. it is relevant to know that the same challenge that we have externally to communicate the value of our products is the challenge that we have internally to communicate the value of our initiatives, of our of the different tactics that we want to apply in the market, both from commercial perspective or from medical perspective or from a market access perspective. There is also a need to find a good way to communicate the value of those incentives to the rest of the teams. And one of those approaches is to use base case. Base case is a tool that that can integrate the power of spreadsheets, so you can have you can interconnect with databases, you can connect with other services, but you can also upload an Excel file that will make some calculations for you, so you can address the need of the payers to have scenarios that are based on their particular units and for their particular patients. You can also use the tool to have interactive storytelling. The presentation that we are using today is a base case tool, so you can see that we have used it to go through the different content in an interactive way. But also, you don't want this critical information to be distributed through isolated files. So you have a library, you have a secure distribution platform that includes a library that it's accessible through web, through iPad in a dedicated app, through Android, and also through Windows. And you can also have the ability to externalize the content in a secure way, setting up some roles, setting up users. So you can have your tools, and you can distribute them. Physicians and other stakeholders can access them when they need to access them, or when they prefer to access them. And then you can have some analytics that your team can use to deliver a pure omni-channel experience. So you can take the information from the interactions in the web, or interactions in the apps, and then you can use it to plan the next visit to improve the quality of the engagement. We have a short video that will communicate the value of the platform, and then we can go through the questions and answers.
Yeah, thank you, Christian, for that great input. Again, please ask your questions if you have questions, and use the chat pane. We already see some questions that came through, and I would like to ask this one. Let's start with first question came through, and the question is: do you consider the shifts in future of hybrid engagement to be statistically significant across all the elements?
Again, please.
That was a question when we were talking about hybrid engagement. We are talking about like shifts of hybrid engagement, and the question is: do you consider the shifts in future of hybrid engagement to be statistically significant across all the elements?
No, but I think that they provide us with a good sense of the trends that will be in the market, even if they are not significant. We can see that that for some of them the trend is very clear in terms of identifying which are the most important factors. Of course, there is always a need to identify better the needs of your customers, of your different stakeholders, to understand if that's the case for them. One of the things that we always recommend to our customers, to our clients, is that they try to gather additional insights from the payers, gather additional insights from their stakeholders, but not only related to the disease or related to the different products that they could be using now, but also related to their preferences, so they can understand which are their contexts, which are their goals, which are the ways that they are being measured, and based on that, which are their preferences towards engagement, because yes, we can see that hybrid seems to be something that will stay, but also another finding that we have identified is that hybrid is not for everything. When we think about when they want to engage with somebody to discuss on a particular, for example, if evidence generation plan. So if you have a key opinion leader that wants to collect some data and then process it and then and they create a publication about it, they prefer to have a face-to-face engagements. When you think about pure promotional messages, they prefer to have digital engagements and also asynchronic engagements. But that will depend on the setting, that will depend on the location, and that will depend on the goal and the life cycle moment of your products. Yes, but our recommendation is always that you gather this data directly from the field. And actually, one of the functionalities of Base Case is that you can use it to collect those feedback information directly from the payers. You can create a tool that can have a survey where after all the engagements, you can collect the data and it can be centralized somewhere. So the sales teams, the commercial teams, the market access managers, they can look into the feedback from the field and make adjustments to the strategy based on that.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question. Another question. Is the platform building a budget impact model for the team based on modules that they can fill in?
Yes. In fact, one of the origin of the platform was to try to come up with a solution for that problem that key account managers had like 10 years ago, when they have to go into an account and they have to communicate the value of a product using Excel. And for the ones that have done it, you will see that it's kind of challenging because first you can break it. Second, you have to be aware of how to navigate through the app in the best way. And third, you have to be able to tell a story using the results and the charts that you can generate with it. So that was the original idea for Base Case. As it grew during these years, it has grown into this value communication suite that you can use for a lot of things. The things that for integrating with data, for just communicating something in a layer structure. But the traditional, the original, the core use of being able to upload a model and then connect the model to a user-friendly interface, that's still there, and that has been improved in the last years. So new functions have been added, new functionalities, and also new objects to visualize the outcomes and the inputs of the models.
Okay, great, thanks. Related to that question is the next one. Is the spreadsheet data linked to live presentation that will update in real time as new information is fed into the system?
Yes. You can, for example, I will do something. Let me show you Base Case. This is Base Case. Okay. So when we think about a chart, when we think, for example, about this chart has some properties. As you can see, everything is drag and drop. Like I created this presentation, and I'm not an engineer. Like I'm an economist and a mathematician. I'm not an engineer, and I was able to create this presentation for you using the platform. So you have this object that will remind you of Excel, and this object is related to this chart, and you can connect this to a model in the backend. So you can upload a model that you already have, or you can upload you can add a data set, even in our project, and you can connect the inputs and outputs with the interface in a seamless way. You just have to use the traditional formulas that you use for Excel to connect with the models in the backend, with Excel sheets in the backend. Then you can also upload or download the workbooks that you have used, and you can make changes inside or outside of the platform and replace the workbooks. So you can, for example, you can have a model, and that model can be replaced because there could be a need for update. And you can just replace the model that you have in the backend, and it will identify the cell positions to update the presentation accordingly. So yes, that's one of the core functionalities that we have here.
Great, thank you. Yeah, great questions we have today. And let's maybe, in the interest of time, take that next question as the last one. Is there an approval workflow function in place before content is deployed in base case?
Yes, of course. We have different approaches. We like to think that we listen to our customer needs, as we are recommending you to do. And we know that some of our customers require approvals based on a PDF with all the references. So what we do is that we have the ability to generate an app export to generate particular reports that can be used for legal reviews. But we also have an add-on that can work for all the approvals. So you can manage your approvals internally. You can take commission tools if they have been updated. You can add some dates so they can expire and no one can see them. But also you can take a tool and revert to previous versions. So yes, we have many functionalities that allow for version control, for version management, and for content approval.